I like Dark Souls 3. I like challenge runs. I like challenge running Dark Souls 3. I challenge myself with something new every time I play Dark Souls 3. This time, I decided to drown my completionist instincts the way I drown my sorrows in alcoholism, and do a no-death run. I went in with zero practice, plans, or preparations, so there was plenty of weird shenanigans, close calls, and tough decisions to make. The rules I've laid out are as follows. Dying in any way is a failure, and I must restart the game over. No summoning friendly players or NPCs. I am not allowed to use a shield or anything else to block enemy attacks, but parrying is allowed. Now, there is a reason why I specified that I cannot use a shield to block attacks, and the reason is quite simple. It's so that I can do this. Get fucked, my friends. And that's about all. Let's get right into it. Starting a game, we had to pick a class. Perhaps to the surprise of some, I did not pick the mercenary. Instead, I opted for the trusty old knight. The reason is because I want to use a straight sword instead of the wind blades. Potentially a skill issue, but I just cannot get to grips with the moveset on those things. Dual strikes are slower than that of a straight sword, and something about the way I move means that, more often than not, only one of the blades connect, instead of two. So if that's the case, the longsword will be a more reliable damage option. I will also be one-handing it for the wider and faster slashes. The loss of some scaling bonus doesn't matter, because I'm going to infuse it with Thrall anyway. As for the burial gift, I chose the soul item. And you might be wondering, why not the life ring? Well, there is no good reason. I just forgot that the Shrine Handmaid doesn't sell it by default. One last thing before we jump into the game world, I was streaming some of this challenge run to my friend, whom you will be hearing alongside me for at least the beginning.
Bro, I'm in a Dark Souls server, and like this one person has a fetish for Gundyr. Like
Why?
I don't know why they're obsessed with Gundyr. Like it's weird. They draw fan arts and shit like that.
Going into the run, I suspected a few points in the game would be big hurdles. Early on, I was most concerned about falling down the kill plane. The reason being quite simple. No matter how many levels I put into Vigor, those levels won't save me from that. I believed the next problem would be Crystal Sage. He's not a hard boss to kill, but he is an easy boss to die to. The amount of damage flying around in Phase 2 gets pretty insane. But the first obstacle on our path was, of course, Udex Gundyr. I wasn't concerned about him since he's right at the start, meaning dying wouldn't be a big problem. But I wasn't afraid of dying, because I feel very confident in my ability to parry the ever-living daylights out of him. This is the part where he kills me.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Get fucked, my friend. I've reached Firelink Shrine and did the usual deeds. Spent all my souls on leveling Vigor. Did the tree skip for an Estus shard and a silver ring. Having arrived at the high wall of Lothric, we have officially passed the tutorial. I decided not to get the longbow as I couldn't really foresee if I would have any utility of it in the future. Fortunately, Lothric Knights can't see you if you don't move, so he let me go. Had a minor scare as I couldn't activate the bonfire, but I just needed to eliminate this bandit hollow. At this point I had enough Titanite to upgrade my weapon, but I still wasn't 100% sold on this longsword. I did end up sticking with it, and I knew this crystal lizard would give me a raw gem. The raw infusion increases the base damage of the weapon, but eliminates any scaling. Since I was planning on pumping all my levels into Vigor and Endurance, this would be a straight upgrade. I decided to skip the side area with the Estes shard for now, and rudely left alone on this elevator, as this crowd watched me close the door on them, on my way to unlock the shortcut to Vort. But that wasn't the only thing on my checklist. I still had to get inside the Cathedral of Blue to get the banner, the cathedral guarded by several Lothric knights. I bet you can spot the mistake I made here. I was actually moving around, so one of them spotted me and engaged in fisticuffs galore. Fortunately, I remembered these chunky boys cannot enter the doors of the cathedral. Maybe they're servants of the devil. Having acquired the octahedron and upgraded my weapon, the only thing left to do was to clap the vile watchdog of the Boreal Valley. I don't usually come here, Ambert. Here comes the meme music. Oh my god. Almost died there. It was easy, though closer than I would have liked. We get ferried over to the undead settlement and I rescue Yoel. I grab the small leather shield, which will be my primary tool for parrying from now on. Leaving this dark room, I jihad some undead, though they weren't too happy about that. Swiftly vacating the area, I realize I'm going the wrong way. This next part is going to be tricky. It's swarming with dogs, undead, and giant machetes waiting to splay me open. I don't have any plan here, I just decided to wing it and hope for the best. One of the blades follows me all the way to this elevator, presently occupied by an extremely indifferent onion. I use this indifference and its extreme weight to let myself into the dungeon. A very cold welcome from its one inhabitant, but it had nothing on my chill when opening this door. I make it through the first part of Road of Sacrifices by doing what a road is used for, running for my life while avoiding attacks from psychotic furries. I make it through the second part of Road of Sacrifices by running for my life while avoiding attacks from psychotic hobos and their Rottweilers. I knew that there was an NPC invasion in this area, but didn't remember what exactly triggers it. Unfortunately for me, the threshold was picking up the Grass Crest shield. So I did what a road is used for, and ran for my life, killing some magical hobos on the way to kill the final boss of all magical hobos. I don't have a strategy on him. I usually die at least once on this boss. I'm scared. I didn't get much damage and he's gonna clone himself now. Yep. Jeez.
You'll get it.
Yes! Okay. This is good.
Nice. Good job.
It was easier than I was afraid it would be. Went about as well as stealing candy from a magical hobo. Just make sure to kill his friends. Or are they his clones? The line between video game and real life continues to blur. I go back to level some more vigor, before continuing on with the magical road of Hoboland. I didn't realize giving the side eye to this bloodborne fanboy was enough to send him into a murderous rage, so I reload the area. I stick to the Battle of Dunkirk strategy, where you run away, and reach the sane hobo. Talking to him is alone to inexplicably teleport me to Canada, but my bonfire parries are at their peak, meaning I get to warp right back. I know there are a lot of Titanite shards in this area, so I decide to explore. But here I explored all the wrong places. I fight and shank this Grave Warden, risk my life to get a piece of bone, kick down the ladder and loot the place. Having acquired the minerals for my weapons, I must now make sure I don't lose my minerals while slowly opening this door. On my way to unlock the Rusty Grate, I get invaded by Spike from hit video game Need for Speed. I don't know if I've ever been invaded by this NPC, so I didn't know much about him. I found he was fairly tanky and did a good amount of damage. But he had less poise than I have IQ, making him more susceptible to a hit and run than the child I hit and ran over in my 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor last week. Having dealt with that, it is now time to kill some clergymen. Honestly, I kind of struggle sometimes with this boss. Some people are like, oh, it's like fucking easy and stuff, and like it is, but it takes pretty long too.
Yeah.
And like there's this one spell in phase 2 which kills you instantly, and the wind-up looks very similar to other spells. I still don't know how to tell them apart. And one of them just like shoots a ball at you, and the other one just insta-kills you regardless of your health. It just curses you. Hello friends. I hope you don't mind. Holy shit.
I like the music of this fight.
Yeah, the music is the best part about it. Not because it's fantastic, but just because everything else is kind of dull.
Yeah. Yeah, this boss doesn't deserve this music, to be honest.
Shit, I need to heal. I have 4 flasks left. Oh, this is the other problem. The clerics can cast an AoE heal miracle. And oh my god.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm gonna make it. This is not looking good. See, they're doing something again, and I don't know if they're doing the... Yeah, they're doing the projectile. Okay. This guy is just stuck doing something. Oh my god. Fuck. I'm gonna die. Oh, I'm gonna get cursed. This is the curse spell, I'm sure of it. Okay, I've averted the crisis. But I'm still gonna die. They're doing the curse ball again. Never mind. It's the other one. I'm gonna try to use alluring skulls. Oh, I'm gonna get cursed. Right? Maybe not. Come on. Yeah, I'm gonna get cursed. I don't know how to... I don't know what to do. Oh my fucking god. Throw the skull. Okay. I think I can make it by the skin of my teeth. If I just... Yes!
Yes.
Get fucked. Welcome to Ohio. To get there, I had to trigger the Hazel invasion again. From this point onward, I would either have to kill them or run all the way to the Abyss Waters before I could rest at a bonfire. I chose the flight option. Furthermore, I brought the dagger from the shrine handmaid. If you're not aware, this thing is indispensable for navigating swamps. The weapon art propels you faster than any roll or sprint in deep bogs, and it doesn't even require FP to perform. I rudely push this guy downstairs and arrive in Kaled. We have to find and extinguish 3 fires to even access the Abyss Watchers. I make my run to the first, second and third fire without much problem. I grab the bonfire next to the Abyss Watchers while avoiding this dark wraith. Merely entering the boss fight is enough to remove the invader, so my plan is to get in there and then homeward bone out of there. This didn't seem hard, but it was one of the more complex sequences of the game. There were so many moving parts, and any single thing going wrong could have spelled doom on my run. I might not even have time to... Shit.
Oh my god.
I don't know their moveset very well. Like, I usually just look through this fight, honestly. I don't know, like their health is really low, so I never really had to learn them. I made phase 1 though.
I don't like this face. Wanna be last boss.
Yeah, become anime. R1 spams the game.
Nice.
Wow, this is going too well. Now for the boss fight itself. If you've watched my boss ranking video, you know I never struggle with these guys. Especially now when my vigor is disproportionately high for this point in the game. Their attacks couldn't even tickle me. This shot of confidence marked the end of my first play session. Session 2 started off with me having to traverse the Palace of Spooks. There was a lot of skeletons and angry boners and not much interesting going on, but I did pick up the ashes that let me buy unlimited small titanite shards. Next boss, Volnir. Look at all the skeletons. Bye bye. See ya. I am scared of Volnir. I am scared of his vape cloud. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Well, not this cloud. I mean this actual vape cloud. Shit. Come on. Oh my god, I'm stuck inside of his hand. He's gonna vape. Oh, come on. Yes! Volnir wasn't much of a challenge. I was a bit concerned going into this fight as I find it really hard to tell where the damaging vape clouds are, and they do a ton of damage. But a bit of clever maneuvering later, we are another boss down. Now it's time for Irithyll. You don't have to fight this enemy, by the way. Nyum. I can't get in, huh? Bitch. So, this is the part where I run past everyone. Hello, this is the part where I run past everyone. Fuck. I equipped the dagger again and had an unforeseen complication down in the swamps. Yeah, this is something that can happen. This enemy can jump down into the water if you haven't killed him. Fuck. Oh my god! I'm dead. Oh my god. Okay. I had another rude awakening, remembering that Londor Paleshade will invade me here. I decided to do the same as I did with Hazel, so I unlocked the 2 shortcuts and entered Pontiff's arena. Having warped out, it was time for Pontiff himself. If you've watched my boss ranking video, you'd know that I find Phase 1 alone to be a fairly challenging fight. But Phase 2 is on a whole other level. I only have one consistent strategy for this part. The strategy is that I have to bait out that long range, like this attack where he flies up into the air and then goes forward. And then what I do is I dodge the phantom, and then when I'm out of the dodge, I immediately parry, and this always parries the real Pontiff, and then you can riposte him. I discovered the strategy myself, by the way. I don't know how many people use this, but it's really helpful. It's time for Pontiff, and you know what that means.
Parry time.
Yeah. Or rather, failed to parry time. Let's go, bitch boy. I missed it. I missed it again.
Oh god.
There we go. I still took damage. Did you see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Maybe because the sword is fire sword or something.
No, it happens when you like parry, but like just on the edge of the parry frames. You still take damage. Fuck. Keep doing that. He's gonna transform now, though. This is the part where he kills me. No! No, 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 no. No, I'm stuck!
Oh god.
Yeah, this is it. I love this strategy, but it's my only consistent strategy. I have to bait out this one attack, not this one. Yeah, I'm gonna try again. And it's my only consistent way to beat phase 2, honestly. Maybe I should upgrade the dagger or something so that I can get better riposte damage. I don't know. Just gonna transform. Maybe I shouldn't go in for that punish when he summons the phantom, because this is how it leaves me. It leaves me just running for my life. Oh my god. Come on. Do the thing. Please. Winky, smiley face, please. Not this. This. Fuck, I rolled! Leave it to me. Literally, the strategy is just dodge and then parry, and I'm fucking it up. Oh, the timing was off! How did that happen? I have to try again. Come on. This is the one. Where I die.
Nice.
Oh, he... Fuck. This is not good. Yeah, that was good.
The way he uses his sword does remind me of Film Knight. I mean, like, he has this small sword and the big sword and
Kind of.
what's happening there.
But Fume Knight has the big sword in the left hand. I guess he's left-handed or something. Oh, that does not work. Fuck, 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 fuck. Good sword. Yes! I made it!
Nice.
How many? That was like 3 tries, I think. Okay, we're not dead yet. I didn't really bring this up, but I've been occasionally putting a point in strength here, a point in dex there, in the hopes that the regular scaling of the weapon would outshine the raw bonus damage. But it was taking way too many points for it to be worth it, so thus ended up being kind of wasted levels. The upcoming part was concerning, the reimagining of the infamous Anor Londo rafters. I had to pick up those ashes in order to be able to buy unlimited large titanite shards, and I was stressed the whole way through. But it didn't end up being much of a problem. It was now time to fight the biggest latte drinking femboy of the year. Yeah. That rain of arrows spell is just fucking bullshit. In phase 1 it's easy though, you just go behind him. But in phase 2 it's way worse. I'm gonna die. What is he doing? Let's see what's happening. Oh, when he does the rain of arrows, I run to this statue because it's the only place in the entire arena the arrows cannot reach. That's the only consistent way I know of to dodge this attack.
knees again.
These nuts. Ha! Got him! Dude, how many balls do you have? Oh my god. I'm out of Estus. I don't think that's a problem though. I think I'm gonna make it. Ha! Got him!
Good.
I beat Aldrich. And you know what time it is now. It's Irithyll dungeon time. With the bussy thoroughly slapped, it was now time to head down. I knew there was this NPC invasion here, but I fought him many times and he doesn't pose much threat. Neither did Irithyll dungeon, as I have adopted the greatest strategy of all time, running past everything. I did not remember how hard Yorm was to fight alone, as in my casual playthroughs I always do it with Siegward, so I might have been a bit overly cautious in this fight. But with good reason. I found that it's a lot harder in Phase 2 to find good openings to charge up the weapon art. Hello Yorm. This is the part where I kill you. Stormkiller. I'm heavy equip load. I'm gonna take off my pants.
Now you can do it.
I think that's one more time. Oh my god. I cannot see what is happening. I fucked up too early. Come on. Get fucked, my friend. Blah 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 blah. Oh no, it's dancer time. Shit. I might die here. I just remembered that it's dancer time.
Yeah, dancer.
Prince Lothric.
Dancer of the Boreal Valley was up next, and it's one of my favorite boss fights in the game. I always kill her early in my playthroughs, so I felt quite confident in my familiarity with this boss.
How many times have you finished this game? Do you remember?
Well, I lost count at some point. I would estimate like 10 times. Beaten it like start to finish. I think 10 times is a good estimate. R1 spam the game. And now she does the Beyblade! Let it rip! Oh shit. Holy shit, what is this attack? Out of stamina.
Nice.
Oh! Okay. Well, that went easier than I thought. Moving on, not much new is happening. I decide to grab the Estus shard down in the gardens, but beyond that it's just been more of running away. I still needed some large titanite shards, but after that I knew I would have to use up some chunks. I knew there were a lot of them in the gardens, Inner Castle and Grand Archives, but I did not remember their exact locations, so I wasn't risking going out of the way for them. Now, this is where everything started to unravel. I did not spend my soul items to buy the large shards, such that I could upgrade my weapon further. I decided to take on Dragon Slayer armor with a +5 longsword. Watching back the footage, I still cannot fathom why I didn't bother. Now, thankfully, this didn't spell my doom. The fight went by surprisingly smoothly, though I did very painfully find out the boss's projectiles go through the ground. What the fuck? And I got hit by this black ball after the fight was over. But what followed next was my most embarrassing lapse in judgment I can remember. You will think I'm making this up, but I really am this dense. I cringe thinking that I really did what I did. Afraid of Twin Princess or the Soul of Cinder. I am not good with this boss. Shit, it's phase 2. This guy is... What are you doing? Okay. I can fight now. Come on! Oh my god. What are you doing? That's what I'm fucking afraid of. Spooker, but what the fuck? I drank too much. Shouldn't have drank so much. Just run. I'm just gonna run until fast. These bosses are doing. Are you summoning? Come on. Yes! Oh my. I would have been really mad if that killed me. So, I went back to buy the necessary shards. Okay, good idea. I upgraded my weapon to +7. The right choice. Then I decided that I should go back and snag some items I had omitted, like this Estus shard. I decided that a +7 weapon for the Grand Archives would be underpowered, so I decided to fetch some Titanite chunks, the only way I knew for sure at the time how to. Kill the big fucking dragon against going to the wiki to look up the locations of chunks I could easily run to and pick up. No. I decided to challenge this black swirling blob of bullshit that you must kill for the dragons to die. Is absolutely anything gonna happen? Holy shit, how did I take so much damage? Oh yeah, that's... I thought that would happen. Okay. If I have enough of those, I might be able to kill them. Or I might just get fucking cursed. Okay, I need to wait a bit for the curse to go down. That was so pointless. Why did I even do that? I got too fucking confident. I was just so scared of having my weapon under level that I was, oh no, I have to get the chunks. Uh, I didn't really bring it up so far, but from about the Abyss Watchers onwards, I was getting quite positively surprised at how well this was going. And maybe by the time I beat the third to last boss, I was starting to get overconfident. While this death was extremely embarrassing, I was also really proud of myself for having gotten this far. At this rate, I would be done with this challenge way faster than I had anticipated. Demotivated, I decided to call it quits and not start a new run that day. Day 2! Attempt número 2. Yes! Indeed! I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This attempt ended extremely quickly. I decided to pick the life ring this time, and I inexplicably completely lost any semblance of skill at parrying Gunder. Still, I beat him with a sliver of health remaining. I was prancing about the front yard of Firelink Shrine, looting whatever corpses I can find, when I lost my concentration and... Where Homeward Bone? Wasn't there a Homeward Bone around here somewhere? Oh my god. Well, looks like we're fighting Gunder again, boys. This is completely on me again. As I was stepping over the sledge, I thought to myself, maybe I should stop moving and see to make sure I can leap down here. But in my defense, it was less than 5 minutes into the run, so I wasn't paying all that much attention. Moving on. Watch this, ladies. You're not gonna be able to resist me once I'm done with him. Fucking watch this. I'm gonna prove to you that I am the alpha male. Everyone's getting wet right now. Everyone is so wet right now. Just spam that shit. Yep! Hit less, hit less, hit less, hit less, hit less, hit less, hit less. Attempt número 3 started off with me casually dropping a hitless Gunder. I also decided this time to take a detour and grab the gold pine resin to help with Vort. And oh my god did it help. The fight was over long before the buff had even worn off. Wow, that was so easy. This resin is really strong. At the next point of divergence, I decided to find the Flame Stone Plate Ring in the Undead Settlement for some additional defense. But I found it about as effectively as my Will to Live, because this was the Fire Clutch Ring, which would not help me. The actual ring I was after was far away, in another universe as a matter of fact. I used the other pine resin on Crystal Sage, and it also went by much faster than the first time round. Who would have thought that adding damage to my weapon will kill things faster? Speaking of dealing more damage, by the time Spike ever so graciously had visited me again, my weapon was only +1. There was no way I was going to fight the Deacons with a +1 longsword. I went around the Road of Sacrifices zone looking for shards and couldn't find any. Out of ideas, I decided to kill Hazel so that I could freely explore Farron Keep, as I remembered precise locations of some Titanite shards down there. I found enough to get my weapon up to +2, which seemed acceptable. And maybe I shouldn't have worried. The fight went by a lot better than last time, but I did witness something I don't think I've ever seen before. The red orb possessed one deacon and then left him and settled inside of another. Caught me off guard, but nothing serious. Do you ever wonder what these ball sacks are? They're moving. Can't attack them. I wonder what happens if I shoot them. Back in Ohio, I was trying to grab whatever shards I could safely find, while still running around snagging the fires. But I forgot that Hazel will invade me a second time down in the bog. This set off a chain of stressful events. There's one shard over there. Oh my god, Hazel again. I don't care, man. Holy shit. Okay. So I can't homeward bone back. I have to go to the Abyss Watchers now. Honestly, I'm pretty scared right now. Oh my god, oh my god. Amount of stamina! Still following me. I'm gonna have to kill you. Okay, maybe not. You're a bit too scary. Fuck this one anyway. This is really bad. Shit. I can't even light the fuck. Okay, okay. Calm down. I have to make it to the Abyss Watchers now. Shit. No, please. Oh my god. I think I might be safe. Yes, okay. Oh my god. Oh. It's okay. I have to calm down. I have to calm down before I go to the Abyss Watchers. Oh, I didn't get the fucking bonfire. Surely. Shit! Dark Wraiths drop Titanite shards. I just remembered. Okay, well, it's time for Abyss Watchers. Oh my god, oh my god! Shit, shit, fuck, I can't move. I actually cannot move. Okay. I thought I was safe behind those doors. I guess not. All of this combined had me in knots, uncharacteristically for the Abyss Watchers. I was really struggling to calm down, and I was making many mistakes. Just gonna wait for the third one to come. Uh-oh. They're still fighting each other. Okay, I'm not doing too hot with the flasks right now, to be honest. Shit. Just calm down, just find a safe route, no? Like this one. That was not safe. Holy sh... Just one more hit. Fuck. Don't die, don't die. Okay. What just happened? No more flasks. Not scared at all. I was throughout this whole fight. I never once broke a sweat. Easy game. What can I say? I got killed by your own ball, you fucking moron. Back to Spooktown we go, and I decided to kill all those skeletons for their sweet minerals. I finally had enough shards to get my sword to +3, and I ever so observantly realized I wouldn't be needing those ashes now. Volnir went about as usual. Oh no, the lizard is getting away from me. What am I gonna do? Where does this gem come from? How did I get this? It just mysteriously appeared in my inventory. Volnir, you have to die. Time to die. What, I beat a boss? What boss? I didn't see any boss. I don't know what you're talking about. That's nothing useful. Wonder what's gonna happen if I go in this tunnel. Does not seem to care. Is he gone? Get in there, Lewis. Miracles do happen, mate. Next boss was, of course, Pontiff, and the fight went by far easier than usual. Didn't even need to retry him. Get in there, Lewis. Oh, still a bit of health left. Doesn't matter. There's not much I have to say about the run that followed, as I've done the exact same thing already. As I was fighting Aldrich, I got hit by the Life Hunt scythe and thought I'd have to retry, but I pulled through and got a cute ring as a reward. I decided to go back for the Estus shard now before going down for Yorm. See? Oh shit. Oh my god. Shit. That's a lot of rats. When am I playing Dark Souls 2? Ha 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 ha. As for Yorm himself, I wasn't doing too hot. I was getting hit often, though I had the health and flasks to manage. Until... I got the charge though. Oh, I missed! Shit, I got greedy. Who would have expected that to miss though? Now that this happened, I do remember that this can happen, but otherwise... I honestly did not remember this could even happen. Shit. Well, at least I don't feel like I died in such a stupid way as previously. It was a bit more deserved, I guess. Well, that was deserved as well, but like... I just played a bit poorly there. Yorm does so much damage. I didn't remember him doing so much damage. Should I level health even more? Maybe I should forego some stamina to level health instead. That might be a good idea. I'll be back later for more. That was attempt number 3. It's just gonna take at least 4 attempts. After this had happened, I did remember that the ranged attack on the Storm Ruler can miss. I don't know why this happens, but I suppose I have learned not to put all my trust in this weapon. At least I felt like I died in battle and was somewhat bested, instead of getting cursed by some black blob of shit. I didn't get further in than on my first attempt, but I still felt like I was on the right track.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. Attempt number 4 started off with me almost dying to Gundyr. I decided to finally look up the locations of upgrade materials, such that I wouldn't have to blindly run around risking my life. Extra life. So the description of the next one is, on the porch of a house ahead of the burning tree was worshipping undead. Which house is ahead of it? Is it the one behind it? Is that what it means? Like past the actual burning tree? Yeah, I'm using Extra Life, I'm sorry. No, I know. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. Fuck that. Okay. Dog dead, crisis averted. Shit. Hey guys. Oh, he didn't like that! Is he gonna get stuck in somewhere? Oh my god. There's a part of me that really wants that Aerithal straight sword. I wish I had something to show, but not much interesting happened throughout the next few zones, besides almost dying to the fucking mushroom enemies, and Andre telling the funniest joke of all time. Good one, Andre. You're such a funny man. I want to die. Oh, you just teleported in front of me. Yeah, I love you. I love dogs. There's such great enemies in these games. So greatly programmed, they're designed well. At least they're not too low. The bosses went about as well as previously. Thanks to Dextra Life, I had a +3 weapon for Deacons, and I also decided to climb the wall in Farron Keep, so that I could quickly get my sword up to +4. However, I had to kill the Abyss Watchers first, such that Hazel wouldn't invade me on my way there. Or so I thought. I thought the ladder was in a place I'd have to trigger the invasion to get to, but I was wrong. I could have had a +4 weapon for Watchers, but my smooth brain ass ballsed it up again. Now, I wish I had anything interesting to say about the following sections, but they really played out about as they already have. I'm struggling to even find any close calls. I was just playing really consistently. Even Pontiff is just really boring, though I needed 2 attempts to beat him. Funnily enough, I struggled on Aldrich. He was spam happy with the soul spears, and I lost a bunch of health. Yorm went a lot smoother than previously, and Dancer wasn't a challenge either. The entire fight took about 90 seconds. Watching back the footage, I was extremely untalkative throughout this whole play session. I think I was feeling the pressure ramp up. I decided to actually take a dip down into the gardens to fetch some Titanite chunks. If only so that I wouldn't try anything dumb in the future. But looting Inner Lothric Castle of its chunks actually put me in a precarious position. I engage in some black marketeering for a further chunk before logging off for the day. My weapon level was +8 at that point. This might be the last one. The last day, I mean. I have located 2 more chunks required to upgrade my weapon again, meaning I had a +9 longsword for Dragonslayer armor. For reference, it was +7 when I died on my first attempt. But my Estus count seemed a bit low, so I went back for some items I had skipped or forgotten about. Also, ever since I had Titanite shortages back in attempt number 3, I was slightly considering getting the Aerithal Straight Sword, seeing as it is a better weapon in my view, and it's easier to upgrade. But it's very risky to get, as I'd have to kill the Outrider Knight in the cellar. I was way over leveled, so I went and killed him, even put 2 levels into Dex, such that I could wield it. Before I realized I only had enough Twinkling Titanite to upgrade it to +2. I was never gonna use that. Dragonslayer was going worse than it should. I was taking a beating, and I even nearly got knocked off the bridge. But I stuck the landing, with a sigh of relief. I just matched my best attempt, and I was going further. The Grand Archives is the last location that I'm truly worried about. because there is a fair amount of magic spam. The reason why I was scared more about Dragon Slayer armor than like Twin Princess, for example, is because, like, counterintuitively, it's because it's kind of easier. So I don't have as much practice. Like, there might be, I'm less used to their moveset, I'm less used to their sort of mannerisms. And that's why, like, more unpredicted things can happen. The Twin Princess I know inside and out. Like, they're kind of hard, but I've learned them enough that they're just not a problem. Like I said, the Grand Archives are full of high damage magic spam, and I can even get cursed in places. But the run went far better than I was concerned it would have. I only had 2 bosses to go. One of them is the best boss in the base game, and the other one is the Soul of Cinder. I decided to run up and grab the last Estus shard in the game. I gotta say, this bridge run never felt as long as it did now, and the throne room looked as imposing. I got my Titanite slab down this elevator shaft, and now my weapon would not be getting any stronger. I say that I'm not concerned about them, but I'm still nervous. It's still like the end of the run. It almost doesn't matter that they're kind of easy for me. Like, I'm still gonna get super fucking nervous probably. Oh, don't fall down the hole. Oh, that would have been run over. So running through... Okay, that's kind of imposing, to be honest. I mean, I've seen this before, but this castle has never been like so significant up until this point, but now it is. Oh, fuck. Well, looks like we're going to Smoldering Lake, guys. Oops. I like the presentation, I like the cutscenes, but I don't want to get too nervous. I don't want to get too psyched up, so I'm just gonna skip this shit. Come on, boy. I knew that was gonna happen. Fuck. Okay, that's fine. Shit. No! Fuck, this is the end. Shit. Can't find an opening. Can't find one. I'm playing so poor. No, 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 no. I'm too fucking nervous. After heal. Find an opening. Okay, that was good. Fuck! It's okay though. It's fine, bro. Calm. No! I'm stuck on something. Yes! Yes! Oh, yes. Just one more boss. One more boss. It's not over. Soul of Cinder is easy, but I'm fucking nervous. I'm scared. I am going to piss and shit and cum all over the place. Let's do it. Let's fucking go for it. No deep breaths, no nothing. I'm just gonna wink for it. Let's go. Hello, friend. delicious. Not gonna lie, I'm not familiar with this boss very much. But it's a good thing he is a sorcerer. No. Almost got grabbed there. Come on. I'm not gonna make it now. Oh, I thought he was down already. Let's go for it. Let's go, bitch boy. Hit. Shit. Calm down. Fuck me dead. Yes! Yeah! Oh, oh my god. Yes. Fuck yes. Oh my god. Okay, let's let's finish the thing so that I don't get like bitten by some fucking dogs or something. Officially game beaten now. Yeah. No, don't start journey 2. Ah, here, I beat it. I beat the game Deathless. I did it. I'm so giddy. I love this feeling whenever I complete some fucking challenge, man. It's always so good. Guys, do you reckon I can beat the tree now? Oh, that is so pleasant, knowing that I've done it. Honestly, took maybe before I started gunning for the challenge, I thought it would take me like 10 tries or 20, you know? Like it would take me forever. Like it seemed kind of impossible, but that first run was so good. I had a very good shot at beating it first try, and that to me was like, okay, this is actually really feasible. Well, this might just have been some of the most stressful 15 minutes of my life. The quality of my performance in these two boss fights probably looks quite bad, but it was good enough to pull through. I'm always super excited when I finish a hard challenge run like this. What even inspired me to do a Deathless run was how in Doom 4 and Doom Eternal there is an optional difficulty setting called Ultra Nightmare, with permadeath. These challenges took me far longer than this one, and despite the repetition, I was greatly enjoying learning the intricacies of each level, how to creatively minimize risk during fights, and the like. Now, Dark Souls 3 is the third game I can say I've beaten Deathless, and I'm all the more satisfied for it. I hope more games will join them soon. But before I go, it's time for the real final boss of the game. Yes, guys, I beat the boss. I beat the tree boss. Yay! Oh my god. Wait, I can't even give him the transposing kill now because he's fucking dead, right? Yeah, shit. Well, that was pointless. Anyway,
My
three.
very own.
Shut up! Fuck you.
Niebieski pierścionek. Niebieski, niebieski, niebieski. Oh yeah, pierścionek. Niebieski pierścionek, bo ja jestem friendem i będę mieć taki life ring. Oh yeah.